Okay. Hi, everyone. Mark Edward Wilows here, and welcome to Gabbin. We have a very exciting show today because we have a very exciting guest. Not only did she co-host a talk show on national television back in the early 90s, and I'm sure everybody remembers the Mike and Maddie show. Remember that show? I still remember the theme song, Rise and Shine, it's a beautiful day in America. Pour a cup of coffee, call a neighbor, it's time for the Mike and Maddie show. And today, joining me on the program is Maty Monfort. And Maddie, welcome to the show.
Mark, it is so much fun to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
And my first question, you look fabulous. What do you do? You haven't changed at all.
Thank you so much. You know, I don't know. I drink a lot of water. I think I also have good genes from my mom and my dad. My dad always looked 15 years younger than he actually was. And I really think that there's something to that. And hopefully he passed a little bit of that down to me. My mom also looks very good. You know, I've never smoked. I live a pretty healthy lifestyle. I mean, I eat my cheeseburgers and French fries. That has not changed. But, you know, as I've gotten older, Mark, I've started realizing that, you know, I can't eat the way that I used to and still stay relatively thin as I've always been, you know. So, you know, I've had to make some, you know, changes. And whenever I see myself creeping up a little bit, I just switch to salads. I do. And I will say during the pandemic, I started walking. My husband's always been a big walker, but I started walking. Obviously, we had nothing to do, right?
Yes.
I started walking two miles, then 3 miles, and now I'm up to like 10, 12 miles a day. I don't do it every day anymore because now I'm busier. Now that things are opened up and I'm working, but that really, I think also getting out there, fresh air.
And do you walk those California sidewalks up the hill?
Well, you know what I do is I live near UCLA campus, and the UCLA campus is hilly and it has great stairs all over the campus. And so that's what I do for my cardio. I don't do weights and I don't go to a gym because I'm horrible with having to say, okay, I'm going to go to this class at this time. And I'm not really a gym person. But what I do is the walking, and you know, I'll walk fast, you know, get my heart rate up, go upstairs, you know, come back down, and you know, it's working for me.
I walked the hill once at Universal Studios and only made it halfway up, and that was that. Maddie, I need to ask you, you co-hosted with Michael Berger, the show Mike and Maddie, a very successful show, a wonderful show. I loved it. Many people do, judging by my email. I mean, it was such a great show. Celebrities and cooking and just down-home fun and Vinny the dog and that famous sofa. And it just was such a great show. Tell me, what was it like for you to be hosting such a national show every morning? I mean, like the theme song says, rise and shine. It was definitely rise and shine for you. So what was it like?
You know, Mark, it was such a beautiful experience, I have to tell you. I came from Spanish television, and Mike and Maddie was my first foray into English language television. And so it was so funny, you know, to go from speaking Spanish on my shows to then, of course, speaking English. And that's what kind of Mike used to laugh at me all the time about just things that I would say to him in Spanish, and you know, he had such a great sense of humor. I laughed, and I always tell Michael this, I laughed like an idiot for almost 3 years straight every single day because he is so much fun. The show was so, I don't know how you could, I don't know, Americana.
Yeah, it was the
use?
show that you sat down with your breakfast and your cup of coffee and your newspaper, and it just was a nice chat fest.
It was just easy. It was easy.
Yes, and it brightened the day. It really did.
Yeah, it was. Michael and I both felt very strongly about keeping the show on a very positive note. You know, and I think we accomplished that. And you know, the time that we were on the air was amazing. You know, the fact that we were on all ABC owned, and you know, we visited your beautiful Chicago many times because our ratings in Chicago were huge. And I think it was that Midwestern
Midwestern flair does it with every show on
Yeah,
television. And you know what also
yeah,
amazes me? All the shows on TV mostly have Midwestern settings. Think about it. I mean, most of them, it's somewhere, you know, situated
right.
in the Midwest.
I
Now,
just
what
think that
was,
the show, excuse me, I think that the show resonated with Midwesterners because it
Mhm,
was so nice and
mhm.
golly
Nice,
gee,
yeah,
that type of,
fuzzy and cuddly.
sweet. So I think that that probably had a little something to do with it too.
What was one of your fondest memories of the show? Something that you really loved doing that so many years later you still think about?
There's so many. I have to tell you, there's so many because there were so many different opportunities. We got to travel the entire country and go and visit and highlight different cities like yours. But one of my personal highlights was flying an F-16 with the Thunderbirds out
Mhm.
of
I
Nellis Air
remember
Force
that.
Base, out of Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada.
Mhm.
I actually pulled the 9Gs. So there actually is somewhere in that Air Force Base, there is my photo that says they have a photo, they have a wall with celebrities that have gone up, journalists and such that have gone up with them that have been able to pull the 9Gs and not pass out. and and I was one of those. And so that was really the most incredible thing. Those types of perks are really, for high dignitaries,
Mhm.
and just to go off in one of those jets. I mean, you're literally going the speed of sound, when you're
Mhm.
like 600 miles an hour. It's just incredible. It was the most unbelievable experience.
Okay. And speaking of celebrities and journalists, you fit the category of both. You have started years ago back in your college days. How did you get bit by this bug to get into the entertainment industry?
Mark, I had no desire, or nor did I think that I had any talent at all to be in front of a camera. When I was in high school, I was in the dance squad and all of that with the
Mhm.
marching band. But when it came time to trying out for the school play, nope, never did. I was always very nervous about that. Then comes my first year of college, and I hear about this auditions that they were having for a Spanish version of MTV
Mhm.
that the Univision network was doing. MTV was all the
Mhm.
rage. Remember, that was
Oh, yes.
1984. I'm
Yes.
totally dating myself.
Mhm.
1984, all the rage. And that's kind of how it happened. I wanted to be on the show, not because I wanted to be on television. I wanted to get to interview all of the musical guests that were going to come on.
Ah.
And that was really the thing that interested me the most, the music side. So
Mhm.
then I ended up going to the interview. I met with the guy that I eventually ended up doing the show with, and we hit it off, and we were a good match. And next thing we know, we're on the air,
Mhm.
and it was every Saturday for an hour,
Mhm.
and we would include Spanish music and American pop music. So it was a really cool
Interesting. Great
mixture of both things.
combination.
Yeah, so we spoke English and Spanish on the show, which was kind of very avant-garde back
Mhm.
then.
Mhm.
And that's how it started. And then I from there I was plucked to do a show called Sábado Gigante, which is Giant Saturday.
Mhm.
It was a huge juggernaut for that network. It was on for something like 35 years. But I
Mhm.
was one of the original spokesmodels when it first came on the air, and that catapulted me into a stratospheric sort of place because the show became so incredibly popular. It on a regular Saturday, because it was seen in all of Latin America, Spain, Mexico, and all the Spanish channels of the United States. We would get on an average higher ratings than the Super Bowl on an average Saturday.
Wow.
So it was very, very interesting. And that show really, I mean, I wasn't the main person. The main person was a guy by the name of Don Francisco.
Mhm.
Um, but that show really got American advertisers to take Hispanic dollars seriously.
Mm.
Until that show, Madison Avenue
Mhm.
um, didn't really give kudos to the Latin market in terms of buying
Mhm.
power.
Mhm.
When that show went on the air and they started seeing the Hispanics, what they were buying,
Mhm.
and the clout that we had, it really changed everything.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, it
And
really changed everything.
till today, I have a lot of friends that are Hispanic, and especially the women. Oh my God, fashion! They are fashionistas.
Yeah, it's a pride thing for Hispanic women. We always overdress, which my mother always said, better to overdress
Yes,
than underdress. We like to look the best that we can, and I think it's very much of a cultural thing. I think it's a pride thing. So yes, you'll always see when you go to a Hispanic wedding, everyone is like decked out to a Hispanic christening. To anything, everybody really cares and takes the time to look their best.
Yes. And how did Mike and Maddie come about?
So I was working on Spanish television on Univision. And again, I hear about this audition. I had just gotten an American agent. I had never had an agent during my time in Spanish television because I went from one show and then internally I got plucked from that show to do another show and then and so forth, So I had never really needed an agent, but I was starting to really feel like because I was really like a rice and beans and hot dogs and hamburgers girl. I really just lived right on the center there. And I felt as American as I was Cuban. So I got myself an American agent, and like a month or two later, she calls and says, there's this audition for a Walt Disney company's looking for a West Coast version of Regis and Kathy Lee. So I went out to Los Angeles. And
and said, here I am, look no further.
Well, the funny thing is my agent didn't have any, because I had just started with her, she didn't have any video of me speaking English because I didn't have any video speaking English. All I had ever done was do Spanish TV. So she sent the Walt Disney people my Spanish video.
Wow.
And they said, okay, have her come in. And then, obviously they realized that I actually do speak English. And Michael and I sat down because he had already been hired. They were looking for a co-host for him. And we just hit it off and we laughed.
Look, the chemistry was there.
And honestly, that day I left and we had a development deal that day. And then 3 months later, we were on the air on all ABC owned and operated stations.
And I do remember your very first show. Who stopped by to bring you presents?
Well, Betty White, yes, was our very, very first guest. And who would have ever thought that she was going to become, I loved her and I knew exactly who she was and I revered her as the great person that she is. But who would have ever thought that she was going to become Betty White?
Exactly. And she is still going strong yet. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And she brought us Vinny.
Yes. Now from Mike and Maddie, what have you done after that? You still kind of keep it in the limelight?
I did for a while. What I did was after Mike and Maddie, I had my son, Christopher, who's going to be 23.
Which days. I hate to interrupt, but tell us also, you brought him into the world with the whole world to see. Tell us that story, TLC.
Oh, yes. So when I was pregnant with Chris, my gynecologist, who had also been a guest on Mike and Maddie's show, a very, very well-known obstetrician, gynecologist, let me take he had been approached by the cord blood registry people. And he was one of the doctors that was really pushing for people who were pregnant to consider when the baby had been birthed to take the cord blood before it was cut, before the umbilical cord was cut, to take all you have no idea the gold that is inside that umbilical cord, because there are stem cells there that could be frozen and that could be used once, God forbid, you would ever, I'm knocking on wood right now, your child would ever need to have stem cells, for example, if they needed it for cancer treatments or things like that. So that was kind of a new thing back then. So that's how I got on the show. And then, so they followed me around the latter part of my pregnancy. And I really wanted to do it because I wanted to inform people about this opportunity to be able to take your child's cord blood and it would stay, in a cryogenic sort of environment, very, very, frozen for, under like minus 50 degrees or something like that. And so God forbid you would ever need it, you would have, so that was really the impetus for me being on it. And then it turned out to be just a beautiful experience, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you have done, Maddie, so much. Now you have another booming career in Los Angeles. Also, real estate. How did that come about? I'm fascinated by that. And in Beverly Hills, of all places.
Well, you know, so I have my children. I have Christopher and Caroline. I worked for Home and Garden Television for about 7 years doing a show called Smart Solutions.
Mhm,
Then we ended up moving to New York. When I moved to New York because of my husband's business, he was traveling 2 to 3 weeks a month because he ran the international division of a record company.
mhm,
So when we were there, I totally left television because somebody had to be home with the kids. You
mhm,
know, I couldn't be following my career and flying to Los Angeles, coming back, and my husband being away. You know, we always felt like each one of us did our things, you know, at the time, and I was there to support him now. I felt like I had been in television and done a lot of things at that point. So I was good with it, stayed home with the kids. Then all that sort of snowballs into, you know, all the things that you do for your children, being in the
mhm,
PTA, then being on
mhm,
the board of their schools and being blah, blah,
mhm,
blah, 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 you know, and that all kind of
mhm,
snowballs into it. So then fast forward, my son graduates from high school. We drop him off at college and I'm driving home. He went to the University of California at Berkeley.
mhm,
So we drove him there because he had so much stuff. We're driving back down and I'm crying. And I'm crying. Yes, I knew I was going to miss him, but I was crying more for myself
mhm,
because I didn't know what to do now. My daughter's very independent. She was in high school. He was already off on his own in college. And what was I going to do now?
mhm,
I wasn't on the PTA anymore and so forth. So I decided to look into the possibility of real estate. My brother-in-law and my sister-in-law were both in it in Northern California, and I called them and I had an earnest conversation with them, and they said, "I think you should try it." So I spent you know, like the first 4 or 5 months of my son's college career
mhm.
while I was at home studying too, studying to
Wow.
become a realtor, and that's really I really needed Mark to have a new career. I
Yeah,
needed
have
to do it.
something.
I wasn't, it didn't interest me anymore to follow the Hollywood
Mhm,
life.
mhm,
I felt that I had been there, done that. I had worked on Spanish TV, English TV. I had
mhm.
traveled all over the world shooting and for pleasure. And I felt like, you know, this is something different.
Sure.
Um, and, you know, I do use some of my skills from television as a realtor.
Mhm.
Um, I feel, you know, my ease with people and just being able to
Your
speak to people.
personality, all of that, I'm sure all comes
It
into
is very
play.
helpful. It is very
Yes.
helpful. And you know, and but I am a very good negotiator. I'm also a very good negotiator. So you know, so that's really the genesis of how that happened. And so
Mhm,
here we are a few years later. My son's already in the working world, and you know, and I'm here and I enjoy it very, very much. It's really a pleasure to help
mhm.
people find and buy their dream home.
Sure. It's interesting how you say about the entertainment business, you know, been there, done that. It is true because, you know, as I've been in it all my life and it's a very difficult business. And there is so much uncertainty in that business and not knowing. And yeah, many people do. They go on to another career like you and they find it very fulfilling. And yet
Yeah.
everybody's trying to get into the entertainment business. So it's a very difficult business. Let me ask you this, Maddie. Seeing that you did step away from it, do you think maybe one of the reasons is because it has changed so much? I mean, you know, back in the day of Mike and Maddie and the shows and everything, and you know what's all going on in today's world, could that have something to do with it?
You know, Mark, I don't know. I do know that it's interesting that you bring that up because I believe that um, timing in life is everything.
Mhm,
When Mike and Maddie came on the air, we other people came on the air, and those were the salacious talk shows that we all know,
mhm, mhm. Yes.
and that some that are still on the air now.
Mhm,
And when we were up against these shows in different markets, they won in the ratings. And so our sweet little show, yes, a lot of people loved it,
mhm.
but at the time, you know, ratings is everything.
Is everything, yeah.
And so that's why I don't think that we're on the air and that we didn't last as long as we did, because I think that we succumbed to the fact that we were the complete opposite of what was
Mhm.
going on. But I think
Mhm.
at that time, people really wanted and were more entertained by the more salacious type of programming, which does not interest me. It never really
Right,
has.
right.
And so it's nothing that I'm searching for. I enjoy being a very positive person,
Mhm.
and it's just not my cup of tea anymore.
Mhm.
It really
And
isn't.
what does the future hold for you? Real estate, what do you see down the road? Or do you
Oh my
take it day
goodness.
by day and whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen?
You know, one thing that I do not do is I do not look in the past. So it's
Mhm.
funny that we're doing this conversation, and mostly I'm really trying to remember about a lot of things from the past because I'm a forward thinker.
Mhm.
But I love my life right now. I've seen my children thrive, and which is as a mother, there's nothing more important. It doesn't matter if I would have achieved so much in a professional manner if my children weren't well adjusted. That wouldn't have mattered at all. I mean, to me, if so I'm that is a great pride that I have along with my husband, that we raised two kids that have their feet firmly on the ground,
Mhm.
that think of others, that we volunteer together as a family.
Mhm.
Not all the time, I do more of that, but I'm just proud of our little family. And I've been married 33 years to the most incredible man, Tony. The people
Mhm.
that watch Mike and Maddie probably saw him a few times
Mhm.
on the show. And it's just, you know what, Mark, whatever God has in store, I'm here for it.
Mhm.
I just try to put out my best every single day, and let whatever comes come.
Mhm. I like that. I like that philosophy. I think that is something people should follow. We live today in such a high-strung society.
We
Everything,
do.
we need this. We make one step up the ladder. We need to go the next step. We have to
Yes.
go to the top. And it's just, it is horrible. And I do like your philosophy, take it at a time, whatever. I think that is what makes you successful.
Well, being on television, it's funny. I there are some people that believe that you are not successful if you're not on TV. So if
Right.
so somebody that would be looking at me now would be like, oh, but she's not on television.
Mhm.
That's not the end all be all, folks. It is
Exactly.
a progression. And I think also the it don't don't worry so much about the end result. Take the journey, enjoy the journey.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's easy, but the journey is really what is the most important thing. That's
Mhm.
how we learn. If we're constantly thinking about what I'm going to be doing in 10 years,
Mhm.
you miss all that time. You miss
Exactly.
your children growing up, and appreciating those times.
Sure.
So it's just a philosophy. And it's not like I know it all. It's just that life kind of sort of teaches you how to go about it, and
Mhm.
and what works well.
Yeah,
And it's
and
worked
don't
for
you
me.
also feel that it makes you a real well-rounded individual? I mean, doing all what you have done, television, real estate, being a mother, a very well-rounded life. Don't you agree?
I do agree, and I'm very, very happy that I am a mother, and that we've had a successful marriage for all these years. When Tony and I got married when I was 22 years old, and Tony and I, at the time, I told him that I didn't think that I was ready for children, and that I may never be ready for children. And he
Mhm.
still married me. And so when I hit like my early 30s, that's when the little bug hit, and I thought, wow, I think the maternal bug
Mhm.
was inside of me, and so I'm so grateful that I have my children. They teach you a lot. They teach you a lot
Mhm.
about so much. Um, and it's beautiful to see them grow, and to see them become their own people, and not I always said to my kids, I trust you until you give me a reason not to. And
Mhm.
so with that, they have flourished because they weren't always worried that we let them do a lot of wonderful things,
Mhm.
and allowed them to become who they are. But we always said to them, you have free will. God gave you free will. And so don't come to me and say that so and so made you do something stupid,
Mhm.
when you had your brain capacity perfect. You're perfect. You're two good kids. So, it's little things like that. And it's not like I had a philosophy, Mark, because like I said, I didn't even know that I was going to become a mom. So it's just things that you kind of learn.
Just learn along the way. It's the process. That's what it is. I always refer to everything as the process of life. And like I says, yeah, and you have led just a very full life. And I was so honored to catch up with you. I've been hearing from a lot of people, my God, where's Maddie? Remember Mike and Maddie? And I would hear that and I'm like, oh my God, yes. And you're talking to a guy that watched your show faithfully. I mean, every morning I watched that program and I really liked it. So I do thank you for coming on and kind of updating us a little bit about your life. And I think everyone is happy to know for you, there is life outside of the Mike and Maddie show.
Oh my gosh, there's been life outside of Mike and Maddie for 20 plus years. I just want to send a big hello to all of the fans that have always been so kind and always wrote so many lovely letters to us. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful time in my life. And I thank you all. And I send best wishes to everyone, and to you, Mark. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best as well.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to pop on YouTube or whatever, you could still hear that Mike and Maddie theme song yet. It is there.
You can.
Yes, and I used to love it. I think there's even a clip of your very first episode where Michael came knocking on your door and you walked out with your papers and you're going to the studio and everything. So yeah, like I say, just a good, wholesome show. And again, Maddie, thank you for stopping by. All the success to you. And maybe we'll catch up in the future, and who knows what that holds. Time will tell.
Absolutely. All my best, Mark. Thanks, everyone. Mwah.